Welcome. Welcome to what some people think is the saddest day in the Christian calendar. Not just the saddest, but the darkest day of all. Jesus is dead and in the tomb. The hopes, the dreams and expectations of so many have been dashed. An all too common experience for people even today. In the midst of the coronavirus lockdown, there are no Easter holidays, no big family gatherings, and even attendance at graveside funerals are only limited to a few people. Even our right to mourn has been taken from us. This is not a happy service. It is a vigil of remembrance for Christ and for all who lie in their graves. But be aware, resurrection is coming. So keep the faith. Keep the faith. Mausoleums bigger than houses. Yes, even the wealthy cannot escape death. Gravestones so old that the names and dates are worn away. Wooden crosses by the thousands mark the fallen of the world wars. Park benches donated in memorial of loved ones fondly recalled. Teddy bears and toys marking the graves of babies and children lost, while lights and trinkets adorn the graves of those who say they have no need of God. Today we gather solemnly, if not present at the grave of Jesus, at least with others like us, who mourn, weep and regret the death of one so young, so courageous, so living, so honest, so forgiving. Christ the crucified, Emmanuel, God with us. Our Gospel reading comes from John 19 verses 38 to 42. Afterwards, Joseph of Arimathea, who had been a secret disciple of Jesus, for fear of the Jewish leaders, boldly asked Pilate for permission to take Jesus' body down. And Pilate told him to go ahead. So he came and took it away. Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus at night, came too, bringing 100 pounds of embalming ointment made from myrrh and aloes. Together, they wrapped Jesus' body in a long linen saturated cloth with the spices, so to follow the Jewish burial customs. The place of crucifixion was near a grove of trees, where there was a new tomb never used before. And so, because of the need for haste before the Sabbath, and because the tomb was close at hand, they laid him there. Amen. And so ends a reading of God's holy word, and to him be all the glory and all the praise. They killed him. They murdered him. Even if they didn't pass the death sentence or hammer the nails in themselves, but they were guilty, culpable with the Romans in the ridiculous trial that chose to let a known terrorist go free instead of an innocent, holy and godly man. My name's Joseph of Arimathea. My friends in the Sanhedrin, well, wait, I can no longer consider them friends after all that they have done. And as for me, I can no longer sit with any authority or belief in justice after this mistake. Not after this. This dreadful decision that saw Jesus crucified on a cross between murderous thieves? I mean, some folk may think that I was complicit in the Sanhedrin decision. Maybe think that I voted with them, but nothing could be further from the truth. For Nicodemus and I would not vote against Jesus and all that he stood for. His disciples have scattered, and as far as the authorities are aware, they have gone to every corner of the earth. But I know where they are, still in the room where they had Passover, behind locked doors, fearful and anxious of approaching footsteps, dreading the knock of the soldiers. Because there are many people who want to end this Jesus thing now and forever, and they're going to do anything now to achieve that. I watched Jesus be nailed to the cross. I heard the words he spoke. I saw him breathe his last. I knew in that moment that I had to do something, anything. And immediately thought of the family tomb that was nearby. Purchased for myself and my family. Only just recently we bought it. It was costly, expensive. But I can afford it. I'm a wealthy man. And I knew this tomb would be empty for a long time, for my family is still young. Well, God willing. So I rushed off to Pilate to ask if I could take the body of Jesus away and give it a proper burial. I was surprised when he said yes. So without waiting, I returned to Calvary, and along with Nicodemus, we wrapped the body in a linen cloth and took it to the tomb. And there we prepared his body with the burial spices and gently laid him on the slab at the back, giving him the dignity and respect in death which was missing at the end of his life. Then I sent word, telling the disciples where he was. But it was too risky for them to come yet. Things would need to settle down, and the tensions would have to ease before it would be safe for anyone to visit and gather at the grave. Yet for now, he lies in that tomb, and no one else will ever use this tomb. For this now is the tomb of Jesus. Thanks be to God. May he rest in peace. Please join us now as we just take a moment to pause and listen to the music that Clotilde has prepared for us.
In manus tuas, Pater, momento spiritum meum, in manus tuas, Pater, momento spiritum meum. In manus tuas,
My son Jack at the time was in hospital and we didn't know what was wrong with him. My mum, she had died a few months before. I think I'd handled her death in a way that I had with all others, professionally and ministerial. Even managed to do the tribute at the church service that we had for her. Jack, well, what could I do? I'd been at his bedside overnight with Linda and I had to escape somewhere. We didn't really know what was wrong with him. So Linda stayed on in the hospital beside him. Her mum was at home with her oldest daughter Sally, looking after her. The following 20 minutes that day were a bit of a blur. I don't know how I managed to drive the car, but I found myself at the Garden of Remembrance at Daldowie Crematoria and standing next to the area where we'd scattered Mum's ashes and where a rose entitled Jenny's Rose was planted. Jenny was my mum's name. I was weeping, uncontrollably weeping. In times of stress, my mum understood me, always had a way of calming me, but at that moment I realised I could no longer tell her anything, and she could no longer comfort me. Oh, Jack got better. Oh, he's had his moments and he's nearly died a few times in his life because of his anaphylaxis. I know my mum would have loved him. His character, his humour, his singing voice, his gifts and his talents, and his massive big beard. Well, maybe not that. Maybe not that. But I could no longer share these little chats with her. And I felt a real loss for the very first time in my life. My mum mattered to me, and I loved her. I depended upon her. She was a rock in the worst times of my life, and she knew when I needed a pep talk or when I needed to be left alone. But that day, I needed somewhere to remember her and to talk to her and to ask her to help me. And I found some of that peace at the Garden of Remembrance, at least enough to let me drive home safely. These places of remembrance are important. Gravesides, gardens of remembrance, memorials in all their shapes and sizes, they help us to keep the memories alive of the people that we value most. Maybe that is why Joseph so willingly gave up his grave for Jesus, so that his followers would have a place to come to, a place to gather their memories about Jesus, a place where they felt they could talk to Jesus, a place where they could remember the best of times, and a place where they could remember the worst of times. And just to have a place to keep the memories of Jesus alive. Now, some folk I know don't feel the need to go to a place to remember, because the memories of their loved ones are everywhere, all around them, and especially in their hearts and mind. And I fully understand that too. But today though, I want us to remember the death and the burial of Jesus and all that he did for us. Yes, everything that he did for us. Let's come before God and pray. Gracious and loving God, in the journey of life, you are our guide and our companion. From our beginning to our end, you are there. You run this race alongside us, at times encouraging us, at times comforting us, at times tending to our wounds, at times carrying us, when we don't think we can take just one more step. For 6 weeks, we have been on a Lenten journey, and you have been right here with us in our discipline and devotion, with us in our weakness and failure, with us in our fear, with us in our hope. As we spend this final week with Jesus in Jerusalem, we are amazed once again by his gentle spirit and fierce determination as he confronts those who challenge him, as he cares even for those who hate him. We are challenged to love as he loves, as he bears witness to the emergence of your kingdom. Our eyes are open to your presence all around us, as he moves with resolve toward his dark destiny. We find ourselves struggling to understand why it has to be this way. God, the journey is not just about the destination. It is about each step along the way. The journey itself is a blessing with all its joys and sorrows. As we run this race, you are shaping us into new people. As we move with you, we are continually born anew. Help us to be attentive to each step, in the darkness and in the light. Help us to fully experience all that we encounter, the good and the bad, for in all it we discover you, O God. Though the race of life goes on, our Lenten journey is nearing its conclusion. Bind us ever closer to Christ, so that we may turn our hearts and minds to all that he experienced in the crucible of this Holy Week. A week both terrible and wonderful. Hear us even now as we join our voices to his, saying together the prayer he taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever. Amen. From behind closed doors, we worship you. From the seats of the car, on the train or the bus, we worship you. From the side of the grave, we worship you. And may the God of blessing and grace, the God of forgiveness and peace, grant us strength to face each day. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.